Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/new music industry. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
You're listening to the New Music Industry with David Andrew Wiebe.
With me today is head of NSDMT, Nick Sadler. How are you today, Nick?
I am awesome. It's about 20 to 11 in London. So this will be the last thing I do for the day before I go off to bed.
Excellent. Are you starting to feel a little bit tired now, sleepy?
No, I had a coffee earlier because I knew we'd be having this chat. So I'm feeling okay. And I'm quite lucky. I'm one of these people who just, as soon as my head hits the pillow, I'm out like a light. So yeah, I'll be all right. I'll be full of energy and that'll be right when I go to sleep.
Excellent. Well, our audience really appreciates it. I'm excited about today's conversation because I get a lot of questions about starting a record label, how to get national exposure as a label, signing artists to a label, and so on. Some people have even asked me to write a book about every aspect of running a label, and although I have some experience, I'm not going to be able to do that without first getting into some conversations with people like you who have more experience. But hopefully we can get some questions answered during this conversation. So welcome to the show, and why don't you start off by sharing a little bit about yourself?
So my background was originally in DJing and production. So I started off in New Zealand, which is where my Kiwi accent comes from.
Of course.
I came over to the UK because in New Zealand it's a population of about 4.5 million people, and I saw at the time there was one DJ who was like a professional artist DJ who was making a career out of it in New Zealand, and I was producing underground dance music, and I was like, this is going to be really difficult. And at the time, all my mates that I'd gone to uni with, they'd all gone to the UK, and they're like, Nick, get over here now. This is the place for you. So I sold up all my stuff, bought a plane ticket, and came over to London. Gave myself 5 years to break into the music industry. I then went out and just networked, went out to club nights. So I was a breaks DJ. I had a few releases out on kind of small indie labels. And I just, hung out with went to the parties, kept hanging out. And then I became friends with a group called Control Z, which was Inchi and Tommy. I became quite good friends with Tommy. He was quite successful. He'd born and bred Londoner. And he was on a label called Hardcore Beats. It was going okay. He wanted to go and start his own label, do his own thing. And he said, hey, do you want to start a record label with me? And I was like, let me think about it. And I was like, fuck yeah, this guy's like extremely hooked up. So yeah, we started Never Say I. Originally became a dubstep label, or in America, Bro Step. It became that really. We signed some early Skrillex and Flux Pavilion, so we got that we rode in that first EDM wave into the US, which was amazing. It was incredible. And I had to at the time I'd started like a music licensing company, because I'd had a few of my tracks put in computer games for quite a bit of money, and I was like, oh, this is a bit of a kind of a business thing, and I'd set it up to kind of help out other artists, but the label just ended up taking off, and so that became like a full-time gig. So I had some experience kind of running a business, and then I had to read a lot of books and learn the hard way. And the reason why I sort of started the label machine was, if I had something like this when I started, I saved 2 years of like hard work. And this has kind of just wrapped up everything you need to know in like one place. And you just literally don't need anything else. It's like start at the beginning, go through if you know nothing. So yeah, that's kind of my story of how I came to be here.
Awesome. I mean, there's so many trails we could go down there. Even video game composition is something I've covered in the past, and I'm sure people are interested in that. But I definitely relate to your point of just like spending the time studying, grinding, figuring it out. I don't have everything
Yeah.
figured out in online business yet, but I mean, my internet marketing knowledge is certainly extensive. I've discovered a lot. I'm actually going back and filling the holes in my knowledge right now by taking a digital marketing course because I see the value in that and the importance of that. Even if I don't end up implementing all of it, I'll find someone on my team who can, and we'll just keep growing because I want to focus on my genius zone, which is clearly content creation.
Yeah. You know what? Our brains are only so big and you can only absorb so much. And I'll tell you something funny. Occasionally, I log into the label machine myself to check on something to do something because I'm forgotten, like, oh, hang on, what's the sequence that you do? And I go in, I've written the whole course myself. Like, I should know it, but like, it's so hard, like keeping tabs on everything. So I completely agree. You can never kind of stop learning and absorbing all that information.
That's hilarious because, I have a little bit of a catalog in my brain of all the podcast interviews I've done too. But for some reason, I can't remember the ones that happened this year. And this year kind of went by in a blur for a variety of reasons. But yeah, exactly. You refer back to your own content sometimes. Like people will sometimes read a passage from my book out aloud and I'll go, wow. And they're like, you said that. I'm like,
I did.
I did.
Oh yeah, I did. That's right. I did. Yeah.
It's so funny. So I'm sure people are curious. You referenced the label machine. What exactly is it and how does it help aspiring independent label owners?
So the elevator pitch is the label machine is for artists and managers that want to build, grow, and run their own independent record label. I was even struggling to remember that for a second. It's essentially aimed at. It was born out the back of. I've worked with a lot of artists, managing them. As you know, in the last probably 5 to 8 years, a lot of artists have stopped signing to record labels. They're now self-releasing or starting their own record labels. It's I think 40% of top 40 releases now come from independent record labels, not the majors. And the reason is all these artists that have already got a little bit established, and they're sort of like they don't need they've gotten some money in their bank account. They don't need the independent record label. They want to do things their own way, but they sort of don't understand the business of it. So I sort of was setting this up for so many artists and running their labels for them. And the label machine was kind of taking that whole process and just putting it in one place. And I wanted to make it super practical. So I wanted it to be less theory-based and totally actionable. So down to details of when you so there's like a database included in there for like every single kind of genre of like all the different types of blogs and tastemakers, and how you go through those to which ones use it. You email somebody, these are the exact words to use, mate, and like just replace this with your name and put your bits and pieces in there. So just every kind of step that you can go through, so you don't have to think about anything. You just follow the process to get from A to B. And that's kind of what I put it together, and it's got recording contracts, remix contracts, the templates. It's got videos that explains all the different clauses and contracts and how they work, how you edit them for your own record label and your own releases. Step by step, how you set up a promotion campaign, how you do marketing campaigns. And there's still plenty more to add as well. I'm going to add bits on merchandising, more on how you're purchasing. I mean, and you know how big the music industry is and how many different avenues there are. And I put a community on the back end of it, which is a forum where I'm hoping. In my ideal world, the label machine will be a place where independent record label owners and managers can kind of be that number one hub. there isn't actually a place like online yet that is like that. So by definition of saying it, I am kind of the number one, but I'm never going to say that until at least I've got a few thousand people on there and it's a proper community. But I really want that to be that place. And you know, the other reason, the community, I mean, so many independent record labels, you know, you are sometimes a 1 or 2 man team, and you know, you're unsure, you're going to go do something, but you're unsure, is it quite right? And, you know, I'm lucky, I often pick up the phone and I know that a label manager's an artist, and I'll be like, yo, Matt, you know, we've got the sync deal through, blah, 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 but they're saying this, I'm not sure what we should do on the PPD. Like, I reckon we should, you know, do, what do you think? And he's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And you go back and forth, you go, yeah, okay, cool, I thought so. And you kind of get back to it. And, you know, I thought there must be so many people out there that you know, they don't have access to be able to ask people those kind of like unique questions. And so, you know, that's the other reason I kind of want to have this forum of people we can share stuff. How much a remix is going for, how much the store's going for, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, and on there I've got a private bit as well where, you know, you can ask me questions offline so now I can kind of see them, as silly as they may be. So, yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'll stop now, otherwise I'll start getting a little too salesy on it.
No, that is awesome that you're trying to create a community for people who are recording and managers and all that, and people who want to start their own independent labels, which makes total sense. You know, I do quite a bit of self-releasing of my own music as well, and I know some of the advantages of starting an independent label or a label to represent yourself. But there must be some reason why people are motivated to do that, right? So what are some of the benefits, just in case people don't know, of starting their own label?
Well, you know, I think as well, something I've discovered this year, and I will answer your question sort of in a roundabout way, but it's like you said about self-releasing, in that, you know, there's a lot of people who want to release their own music, but not necessarily launch a full-blown record label, you know. But if you haven't released your music before, if you do self-release, when you have to go to a distributor, you actually have to always put in there a record label name. It's just the way the industry works. So by definition, if you self-release, and you'll end up putting in there like artist name, label, or just artist name, or whatever. So if it's not too important from that aspect. But essentially, when you do self-release, you are following if you're going to do it properly, you're essentially following the process that a record label will do to put your music out there. So, you know, the benefits of doing it yourself is you're in full control. I mean, that's usually with existing artists, I say that's their biggest benefit for them. You can, you'll own all the rights. You aren't reliant. I guess the biggest thing as well is when you really want to do your marketing push and you really want to put your music out there, you're not having to rely on the label to do it. You're just more in control of your career, I guess. Yeah, it's probably easier to try and say like the benefits of not signing to a record label than the benefits of starting one as well.
Yeah.
You know, I guess this is always a tricky question for me as well, because I am a label owner as well, and I have, you know, managers. So I've got artists that I manage. In some respects, I don't want to, you know, poo-poo signing to a record label too much.
Yes.
And I guess if you're signed to a good label that's on board and got your interests at heart, then it's a great place to be. And I'd recommend, if you can find a good label, to do that. If you can't find a good label, or you already have a big enough audience and you've got a good team around you, you sort of don't need that then, and then you can set it up yourself. And then there is, which is the other recommendation, is you do a hybrid. You know, I did a talk on Saturday at Ministry of Sound in London as part of the DJ Growth Conference, and you know, a lot of people kind of asking me the best kind of path to take, and I said, and sorry, the head of Beatport was there, and he was saying that when not Avicii, it was David Guetta, came back to sort of start doing underground dance music again. He kind of wanted to, you know, and he had his own record label, wanted to put stuff out. He put it out. He put it out on his label. He put it on Defected. He put it out on like 3 other different record labels. Now he owns his own record label and he's got loads of money to do his own promo. But he's still kind of diversified. And you know, it got me thinking when someone asked me kind of what's the best plan. And I think it's a hybrid approach. Like have your own label to put your own music out. And so when it's right and you need to put something out there, you need to control and you don't need anybody. You can do that and you have the platform to do it. And you also understand everything that needs to be done. You've got the contacts, you know, you can reach out to, you've got some relationship with some blogs already that you know is going to post your stuff. When you want to do a marketing campaign, you know what you're doing on the back end. But then when the time is right and you're like, hey, this is actually really suitable for this record label over here, you know, perhaps, you know, it's in maybe a new territory for you, or a territory that works for you. You know, they're going to do a good job. You sign it to them and they release it on their label as well. So I think, there's benefits to doing it, both having your own label and signing a label. And I guess ultimately, you know, over your course of your career, if you're going to be releasing a lot of music, it's handy to have your own label that you can do your own things on. And then, of course, to also sign to other labels. Yeah, did that answer the question?
I think that's brilliant. Yeah, the way you explained it and about diversification, that's fantastic. That's definitely something people can begin thinking about as they release more music and become more popular and grow their fan base. You know, so the next question I have, it's kind of a thing about priorities. Like, what exactly would you advise someone focus on when they're first getting a label established?
So I'm a big believer in planning. You know, what's that Benjamin Franklin? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I think it is, or something like that. The other reason why is a couple of reasons why you should write. Like if you're asking me what's the very first thing you should really do, is sign up to the label machine. And then the second thing you should do, which is actually the very first thing I say to do, is to write a business plan. And it's a kind of like, some people say it's a bit of a boring thing, but it really is essential. And all the labels I've worked with that have sat down and done this in the first instance have gone on and they've become successful. They haven't fallen over. Because it forces you to actually think like, you know, if you don't have a record label name, what is my record label? Who actually is my audience? Who am I going to get to work on this? Like, you know, how many releases are we going to have? And then, therefore, how much money we're going to spend on each release. So how much money do we need to actually invest? You know, like specifically, what is that? You know, what's your tone and brand? You know, it forces you to kind of think about these things that, you know, you sort of go, oh, yeah, I sort of know. But when you actually have to type it out and think about it and defining what you're going to be, it's a really important part of the process. And it gives you confidence to then when you move forward to, you know, to take your best step forward because you've thought about everything, you know what you're doing. And when people ask you what's going on, you're not going to be mumbling around and sort of, you know, oh, I'm not really sure. And we may be doing this and maybe doing that. People are going to go, I'm not taking you seriously. You don't know what you're talking about. And secondly, the other reason is we apply in some distribution companies, which are some of the kind of mid-level distribution companies, you have to apply to become a label with them. And if you get on board with them, they're great because you'll have like an account manager. So this is like not the DistroKid, which is just so DistroKid, for anyone that doesn't know, is a platform for just putting your music out there. It's like TuneCore and CD Baby, but it's just a service. There's not a phone call you can call up. It's you know, you upload the music and it goes out. Whereas companies like AWOL or goodness me, Believe Digital or my brain's gone completely blank now. But those, the record labels, LabelWorks is another one. We have to apply. They have to see a business plan. You know, they have to see what's going on. And, you know, if you can, when you set up, if you can get on board with one of these distributors, you should definitely do it. So it's worth applying, putting a business plan together, sending it to them. and getting on board, because they'll be a big help, and there'll be someone that can kind of hold your hand at the beginning. So, as the very first thing, that's what I would say. And then secondly, I always sort of assume that you've got music ready to go if you're a artist that's going to be releasing on your own label. You've got music to the point that it's comparable with your contemporaries. You A/B it in the studio, and it's not lower in volume. The quality is just the same. You want to make sure you've got your first few releases or your first tracks lined up. And then after that, I think the next best thing to do is actually start. And I have a feeling you might disagree with me here, but I feel that the next thing to do is to kind of, figure out what your logo is going to look like. Hopefully with your business plan, you've got your record label name sorted, and get your logo sorted, maybe buy your domain name and have a holding page. And the reason why for that is it's a bit of a fun, it makes it a little bit more real. Like, I've said, here's the website, and you've got it, even if it's the logo on the holding page. I think it's quite a nice step. It's a kind of something you can do easily and quickly, and get a sort of like an actionable thing done. Like you're taking action. So I always say like that probably be the next thing. And then, and then there's like a million other things to do after that. So I'll stop there.
Yeah. That's sound advice, and something that I often talk about or have talked about in the past is just this idea that people will create business cards and their logo and their website without having any product or really any sense of direction in terms of what they're doing. So that's primarily what I discourage. Whereas I think if you're starting to set up partnerships with distributors, you are pretty serious about what you're planning to do, and so having an established brand would totally make sense to me.
And you do it. You have to, when you reply to them, they're like, "What's your website? What's your SoundCloud?" So you sort of do have to have that set up.
Yeah.
But I did say, my first thing was, make sure your music's ready. Like, if your music isn't ready, because I know what you mean. When I have met people that are like, and I'm like, awesome, like, hey, send me some tunes. Oh, we haven't quite finished them yet, and I'm like, why the hell are you starting a record label if you haven't even got your music? The whole point of the label is to release your music. Like, you're trying to run before you can walk. So, I do agree. Once you've got that music, though, then you can take those next steps.
Equally funny is to me is some of these success stories out there that basically portray the idea, I've made $4,000 a month in music. I'll show you how, or, I make $6,000 a month on Amazon. This is how I've done it, which we all get to learn from. So to that extent, it's totally beneficial. And I don't want to diminish anybody's success, but the questions that need to go on in everybody's head when they're reading or looking at watching stuff like that is, how much are they spending? How much are they saving? How much are they investing? How much are they reinvesting into their company? If you're not asking those questions, you have no idea, because you could be making $3,000 a month, saving $300. They could be making $8,000 a month, saving $80. Who's coming out ahead? The person that's making $3,000 a month. So we have to examine those things pretty critically, and that's becoming a more important skill than ever before. It's just looking at things critically.
Yeah, and on that point as well, like, if someone does something around a release, another thing that happens, and we're in the creative industry, and any creative industry, you can put ducks in a row. When you put your artwork out there, the critics and fans are either going to hate it or love it, or it's somewhere in between, and you sort of don't really ultimately have much control over that, like, because it's by definition of it being a creative art, and people have like different opinions on it, and but if something does fly and go really well, and you didn't, you just did everything you normally did, you maybe didn't do that much about, but just something just strikes a note and hits and flies, you can be led to believe that I know how to do it all now, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, you just wrote a really good fucking song, and everyone played it, and it was a runaway hit. And you made a bunch of money, but now you're trying to say, hey, this is how you do it. And it's like, we're all doing that, you just happen to have a runaway hit. Like,
exactly.
I think there's a bit of that goes on, and I think especially when you see people who are sort of using something from 3 or 4 years ago, and it's like So any reason why you haven't replicated what you did 4 years ago?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you know,
You're totally right. I've put some material out there that I think is pretty good. Not all of it has been high production value. One of the EPs I released this year was in June. It was called No Escape EP, and I think there's got some good production on it. Most of all the other things I've released have been lo-fi, and I enjoy doing that and have fun with it and want to show off my experiments rather than just keeping them on my hard drive, as many musicians tend to do. But yeah, it's the same thing. I'm putting this out there. I think it's good. Has any of it taken off in a major way yet? Not really. I had like one single called City Lights that was kind of synth wavy that Europeans seem to dig, but I think it even charted in iTunes Europe, but I didn't see any compensation for that. So obviously it wasn't significant enough, just a blip on the radar. But you're right. We have fun with these things. And this whole thing about business plans, like that's something I've been trying to make fun for musicians and music entrepreneurs. And it's tough, right?
good luck.
I know. And it's still a work in progress, but I've developed this whole thing about the 1-page plan. If you can fit it on one page and know exactly what you need to do, then you've actually condensed it to the point of being able to figure out what it is. Even though the document that you would probably need to present to investors or whoever else official would probably be a multi-page document that contains all the detailed steps, right? It depends on the situation, but
I mean, on that point, I mean, the template I have is like 8 pages long, and it just, it covers everything off. And the way I've found it easiest is it says, it's an explanation of, what your, what your vision is. And then I just have 2 examples of fully written out visions of other labels. And then I just say, look at those. And then think about yours and just write your own kind of version of that. So, I mean, worst comes to worst, someone can kind of see what other people have kind of written and then kind of do that. And even on the budgeting, I've got a whole budgeting template you can edit yourself as well and change the numbers around in the Excel spreadsheet, sort of depending on how many releases you want to do, and then spit that out. I don't know if there's any way of making it fun. Maybe just making it as painless as possible is probably the key. It's once it's done though, it's done, and you're in a better place, which is always good.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of things need to go in there, like email marketing and social media and website and branding, or is it more how you're going to spend your revenue or?
I knew you were going to ask me that. You know what I'm very quickly going to do. I'm just going to happen to look up
Well, people are going to want to know that for sure, especially if they're going to start their business plan after listening to this episode.
Here we go. I'll just quickly open up the template so I can go through it and tell you exactly what it is.
Wow, thank you.
First thing's a summary. So your summary is what you write actually at the end, because it's a summary of the whole section, or sometimes it's called in a more traditional business plan an executive summary. So then the second is your business overview. You want to introduce key people who are involved with the label, what experience they have, any qualifications or trainings might they have, and where you'll be based, location-wise in the world, and the future goals of the label. So current, and then you want to have your current position. So this is a summary of where you are right now with your music plans. The growth, the summary of how you grow a record label with your financial goals. Page 3 are your strengths, opportunities, and core values. So your strengths and opportunities, that's where you list your strengths and opportunities as a record label. It gives you an opportunity to talk about your USP, what your unique selling point is, and critical success factors. So if you have something unique, such as a link to a key industry contact or an opportunity, that's kind of where you put that in there. Maybe even like a brother or a father or something who's a famous musician or something would be an example. And then your core values. So that's what's important to you as a label. Are you going to be pushing underground music? Are you doing experimental music? Are you doing this to release your own album to support your tour? Or are you interested in working with more mainstream artists? That's kind of what the core values is. Page 4 is your business strategy. I mean, should I keep going? Am I doing too much detail, or is this?
No, this is great. Yeah.
Okay. So page 4, your business strategy that's where you outline your strategy for the next 5 years, like your tangible goals, how many releases you aim to have, will you sign new artists, when do you aim to break even on the revenue? And my suggestion is always you should have at least bare minimum 3 singles or EPs in your first year. If you're a producer, DJ, or band, and 6 to 8 records if you aim to sign artists to your label. And you probably want to be breaking even within 12 to 18 months of setting up the label and supporting yourself. So, 3 to 5 year goals are what you should be doing after you achieve your 1 to 2 year goals. But always, sort of write out your 1 to 2, and sort of your pie in the sky is it? I think your big
Yes.
dream goals is your sort of your 3 to 5. Page 5 is your distribution and label products. So this will be who you want to distribute your label through. Are you going to be doing events? If you are doing events, how will they be promoted? Other options as well. Merchandising. Are you going to do merchandising? Who will be responsible? Will you manufacture your own merchandise? Will you use a company? What company will you use? What would be your prices? Step 6, page 6 is the label management and operations. So this is key personnel who will be managing the label and other team members you might have, such as key partners, such as merchandise companies or management companies. So that's just a list there, label manager, marketing manager, merchandising manager, and a list of what their responsibilities are. We're on the home straight now. Page 7 is your marketing. So these are your marketing goals, objectives, targeted, and promotional activities for the label. And that'll be over your goals and objectives around what strategies you have for the future. So, would you be putting in there, you'll be doing, you aim to be in press publications? Are you going to be mostly wanting to get on YouTube channels? Are you going to be using chatbots with your social media strategy? And then you have your target market. So this is who is your ideal target market, very clearly defined, what the genre of music you'll be releasing, locations, and age group as a minimum. And then advertising and promotional activities. What advertising promotion you use to promote the label and releases? Are you going to use PR companies for the first release? Which social media platforms are you going to focus on? Because you don't want to focus on every single one. You want to kind of find out the ones where your fans are. And then the final page is your financial budget and forecast. So startup label expenses, release expenses, optional expenses, your cash flow forecast, any optional revenue streams. So if you are doing events, how much you intend to make off them, and a profit and loss projection. And that's it. And then you have a little summary of the record label budget. So, I'd have like a full table that you can fill in and then export the little kind of summary that you put in your business plan. And that is a business plan. Bish, bosh, bash.
Excellent. And all this and more is available in the label machine. So definitely check it out. I like it.
There's a bunch of examples to read under all of those as well, to make it a bit easier. I wasn't going to read it online, but yeah.
Very thorough. Now, here's one of the questions I've been building to. So I recently went on a rant about aspiring label owners who say they have $1 million and want to get national exposure for their labels. Now, I've had more than one email like this. So either there are a ton of people just handing out $1 million to start the label, or they're just tire kickers trying to figure out if I'm any good at what I do. Either way, we're just dealing in hypotheticals here. But if someone came to you with that question, how would you answer them?
So what's the question? I have $1 million.
I have $1 million and I want to get national exposure for my label, which seems like an outdated concept or idea already because we live in a fairly globally connected world.
You know what? I actually have an exact answer for you.
Wonderful.
Which I will bring up just here so I can read through. Because I actually was looking at this morning and I put together a spreadsheet so weirdly about this. So bear with me while I just find it amongst my other things.
Well, us business types like to geek out over these spreadsheets, right?
Yeah. Oh, goodness me. Where is it? I'm actually going to do a blog on this as well, and at some point.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, because I guess you probably have it all mapped out how that budget should be or could be used.
So tell me, my first question would be,
Yes.
are you a R&B and hip hop artist, a pop artist, a rock artist, or an electronic and dance artist, sir?
That's the same thing I asked. Who is your target audience? And I couldn't
Yeah.
get an answer.
let's assume they are a hip hop artist. I nothing against hip hop artists, but I reckon you get more hip hop artists coming through with those kind of questions.
Yes. Certainly hip hop artists are go-getters in my world, and I love that about them. So
That's just smoked a big fat blunt and they're feeling super inspired. I figured out how they've got $1 million off their uncle. So I would on urban radio, I would spend $70,000 across rhythmic, urban, and urban AC, with maybe a couple of grand for club servicing. For content, artwork, and promo photos, I'd be spending about 10 grand. So we do a proper blinged out photo shoot. And then on video production, video and B-roll stuff, I would be spending upwards, probably around 150 grand to do a proper music video. And which sounds like a lot of money, but remembering we've got $1 million here as well. And so we want to do a decent music video that looks as comparable to, anything you're seeing from the hip hop community these days. Remixes and features, 220 grand. When it comes to media, I'd be spending 210,000 on advertising, and that would be across digital advertising, traditional, and influencer street marketing. I would spend 100,000 on publicity. I would assume that you are performing, especially if you've got $1 million, because you want to be recouping on that on your 360 budget. So I'd be putting 100 grand towards tour support, which should go towards show development, ticket buys, and merch. And then promotional appearances on TV, promo tours, showcase, and parties, another $50,000. And there is your $1 million, sir.
boom, mic drop. Killer, man. Wow. I had some suggestions for them as well, and they weren't all the same, because I was kind of assuming I was coming from a place of assuming they didn't have any artists and they had no idea what they're going to be promoting. But but coming from a place of hip hop, you can definitely begin to be more specific, right, in your approach. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to have a $1 million campaign.
Yeah.
Be a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean the largest campaign I've had was just under 100 grand. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, which was nice. And that was spread out over. That was spread out over about 6 to 9 months. So that to a dates album release. Yeah, I mean, and that was an indie artist as well. Yeah. It goes quickly. It goes so quickly. Bloody hell.
It does. Yeah, no matter how big that budget is. And I've even shared before, I'll be on the first plane to come and help you wherever you are in the world if you're willing to shell out 5 to 10% on my consulting fees.
Yeah.
And that offer still stands. So yeah, if you're really at a loss how to spend it, but obviously it sounds like, your product would be a wonderful place for them to maybe begin learning just the ropes before worrying about national exposure. What do you see as being the most challenging aspects to navigate as a label owner?
I would say the most challenging aspect is managing artists' expectations and managing the art and just generally managing artists in general. They want the fucking world and they want it yesterday. And they don't want to have to do a single post or tweet about it. They just want people to adore them and love them immediately. I mean, I'm obviously exaggerating, but that is probably that's the hardest thing is bringing the kind of commercial sensibility towards, you're as a label manager, you're sort of, and running a label, you're on the business side of it. And you're doing some, if you're doing A&Ring, you are kind of part of that creative side. But when you are being the label manager and you've got that hat on, your job is to, hey, how do we sell records? What do we need to do that? And what limit, like kind of what that limits what we can kind of do. We can't do a gold engraved album cover for you. It's just not possible, no matter how much you've dreamed of being that, your debut release. So I think, and artists as well, you can't just go like, wake up and smell the coffee. That's not going to happen. Come on. Hello. You have to sort of go, hey, so that's a great idea, Oscar, but maybe the better way of approaching it, and and having to have those conversations over again, I'd say that's the most challenging thing. And I have to say, to artists out there, the ones that do well quickly are actually the ones that have got a bit of a business head on them already. Like they're a little bit like entrepreneurial. They just say, and they also just don't question it as well. Another frustrating thing is when an art, and this comes probably more when you're doing the artist management side, they go, hey, they come to you like, you're my manager, like, make me famous. You're like, great, okay, we need you to do this, this, this. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. Or like, oh, that's kind of, I don't think that's that cool and stuff. And you're like, it doesn't matter. Like, this is what you need to do if you need to get to this point. And the artist, when you say, hey, we need this remix done, can you get it done by Sunday? And they're like, yes. And then you say, hey, can you do this? And we just need you, before your show, you just need to take a photo of the crowd and then send it to us. Okay. Like, those are the artists that do really well because A, they're easy to work with, so you're more likely to put more attention onto them. And B, they focus on being an artist and writing music, and they let you focus on doing the business side and selling the records. So yeah, that's probably the toughest part. Yeah, I mean, and once you sort of got your label up and running and it's humming along, it's a lot of fun. I can't really say there's anything really too stressful about it. Yeah, I mean, and when you're starting up, it's always you've got to put some money into it. I mean, yeah, and as a side thing, which is just slightly off topic though, and it's kind of what I was kind of writing this morning. What I got inspired about is how many artists sort of just think you can do everything for free, and hey, I'll just put tweets and post up on Facebook and stuff, and eventually build up my audience and become famous. And they're not willing to put money into it. Like, you need to put your money into it. Like, unless you can discover a record label is going to invest a lot of money, you need to invest your own money. Like, get a job. Like, save up money. Like, don't go out. Don't drink. Don't do drugs. Don't buy like those extra coffees. Save that money up. Save up $5,000. Save up $10,000. And then spend that money on like putting your music out there. Like, that's how you're going to become a success. I kind of really want to try and get that across to a lot of people out there that are sort of trying to get their career started. Because when you start out, if you don't have money, that's going to be struggle. That's going to be hard. If you're starting a label with no money, all the labels that we've started with, like minimum $4,000, like minimum, because you just got to have money to set stuff up, pay, you got to, even if you want to do your own PR one day, when you do your first release, you don't really have any contacts. You need to go to a professional PR company who's going to do a news release about, your new record label and get people talking about it. And you just have to pay money for that. There's just no two ways about it. Yeah. I'll stop there.
Okay. Yeah. Success occurs where opportunity and preparedness meet. And oftentimes the piece that's missing for artists is that preparedness. And if they would just delve into a few valuable, useful resources on this topic of thinking a little bit more business minded and having an end goal to aspire to, and seeing clearly the vision for what it is you're trying to accomplish would make such a difference. And I mean, that's why I do what I do. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you've overcome as an entrepreneur?
Getting a bit of a life. I mean, I'm now married, and getting married made me realize that I need to carve out time for life outside, my business and my work world, and realizing even though I found something that I love doing, and so what's that saying? If you can make a job out of something you do, you never really work, or there's something like that. It's not a real job and stuff. So that's great, but the downside to that is, you can't. That doesn't mean you can spend 16 hours a day doing it, because that in itself is unhealthy. You need to still spend time, with your friends, with your family, with your loved ones, and get that balance right. And exercise regularly. So that's definitely, when I was younger, that was definitely a challenge for me to kind of get that balance right. And then as I got older as well, another personal thing was just like, I'm a natural kind of outgoing guy, and I like to go out and socialize and party. And that's a big part of as you know, being in the music industry and going out networking.
Yep.
But learning to, on a Thursday night, we've gone to a gig, and then the show's finished, said hello to the band, and then going home at 10:30, instead of going to the after party. Yes. And then partying until 2-3 o'clock in the morning. That was like, and that sort of ties into that I sort of mentioned before, is just learning to kind of, as I migrated into being more of a professional person working in the music industry, is being professional everywhere. Not thinking, well, when you're out and about, it's like, we're at the bar, have drinks, way shots. Like, you still have to be professional there, and learning to do that, and going out and having a massive show and everything going amazing, and having that, wow, we should pop the champagne, and then just learning to go, hey guys, that was awesome, high fives, and then getting in the Uber and going home and being home by 11 o'clock, and going, that was an amazing, successful, incredible night, but I'm going to go to bed and get up tomorrow at 9 o'clock and get on with my day. And that's, personally, that's always been a bit of a challenge. Apart from that, I can't think of stories around that happened that was boo-boos, like, what was the name of the city? Was it not Denver? There's is it Colorado?
Colorado, yeah.
Is that you say it?
There's Denver and Boulder would be the other major city there.
Now, is Colorado near Canada?
Kind of. I'm actually headed there in December. It's probably like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour flight.
So yeah, I thought that it was part of Canada, and I had an artist who was doing a 3-day tour, and what are the other big countries, the other big cities in Canada that are up on that?
Basically Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, and Ottawa.
Toronto, yeah, it was Toronto and Edmonton, I think.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought it was a full 3 Canada tour. Now, if you're a UK artist, you don't need a visa to go to Canada. You don't need a working visa, or you just need the promoter to write a little letter, and you show that at the airport and you're in, and it's, duty. It's not like, hey, you have to get a proper visa, like your S1 visas and stuff to go into the States if you're UK. So I was like, awesome, going out, the other thing that was, so you can see where this is going.
Yes.
So the last show was in Colorado, and it was also a big debut show for the artist, and a whole lot of like other agents and stuff were going there. It was also his biggest paid show to date. I think it was around 25 grand at the time. And yeah, I got this. He was halfway through, and then someone, like one of the tour managers, was like saying, "Oh, have you got your visa?" And he's like, "What? Why do I need a visa for?" And they're like, "Well, you need it." And was like, "Well, no, he doesn't need a visa. It's like it's in Canada." And they're like, "No, it's in the US." And I was like, "Fuck!" And that was probably my big. And we tried. So we had to fly home. We tried to sort it out, and we tried to get like a 24-hour emergency, and it was like it just didn't work out, and it didn't happen, and he missed the show, so we didn't get. That was my biggest mistake. And what did I learn from that? What was the challenge that I overcame? I guess just double, triple check everything. Check visas, get other people to check stuff as well. I'm a little bit of a like kind of just do everything myself because I know I want to get done kind of guy. And I've learned that everyone makes mistakes, and I don't want to make another 25 grand mistake again. So yeah, always have somebody else check over your work. If anything, it also means you can blame somebody else.
Yeah, we've all made the mistakes, and I've probably made the easiest ones in the book myself. I guess maybe that's what makes me able to navigate a variety of situations, is because I've made all those difficult and sometimes heartbreaking mistakes. I related to what you said about having a life as well. Earlier this year, I endured a breakup, and I was a little
Sorry to hear.
Yeah, I was a little more invested in it than she was, and yet she was constantly pursuing me. So this is, a weird mind game type situation in a way. But I guess my point being that, hanging out with her gave me a sense of what it would be like to have someone significant in my life. And that was my, I guess, biggest takeaway or lesson from this whole thing was like, yeah, okay, these 12-hour days, these 10-hour days, they can't happen. They're not going to happen. If I'm in a committed relationship, it can't go on like this. It's not healthy, and it's just not going to be, fun for either side to live that kind of life. So that has me very conscious of that fact. And, that's the whole thing of putting more income sources on autopilot and automation, and having a team to handle different aspects of it. And just being very mindful of what I'm saying yes to, and be consciously saying no more often is going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, it's a false economy as well, because if you set your life up, that you're comfortable in working 12 days, well, then you have to work 12 days. You can't suddenly, and then you try and say, well, now I've got to, you might have a baby or something. It's like you're just forced to now only work 8-hour days. That's four. If you're working 12 hours, what's that? 4 times 5. You suddenly got to lose 20 hours a week, 80 hours a month.
Yep.
That would be, like I said, false economies. You just can't do it. You've got to start setting yourself up that in the early days.
Exactly. It's not sustainable, and you also have to have recreation time. Super important. And then the flip side is, what are some of the biggest victories you've experienced as an entrepreneur?
Getting my first record signed was pretty cool.
Yep.
Being like playing all, I love, when I was DJing, I'd love going and playing music to people and making them dance and putting together a great show. So getting to, just play all over the world was amazing. I think going back to when I got to go, we did a label tour of New Zealand when maybe about 2 or 3 years after we started it. And it was pretty cool. It was really nice going back to New Zealand and then going on tour with the label, like playing under the label, because I'd left New Zealand, and then I'd kind of, sort of, hey, I'm going to go make it. And then I kind of came back to New Zealand and was like, hey, I've made it. That was like, a kind of a really nice personal victory. Yeah, I mean, what else? I mean, when Skrillex, when he won his Grammys and he name checked our record label at the Grammys, that was pretty cool. Because that was something I could show I sent the video to my mum, and she kind of was like, "Oh, wow, you must be doing okay then." Like, it's something where, she was like, "What's all this dance music?" And, but like, sort of gets it, but doesn't. Whereas like everyone knows what the Grammys are. So, yeah, so that was pretty cool. And just, and bringing, taking artists. I mean, something I absolutely love is working with artists. So working with the Prototypes was amazing. They were about to quit on their career, started working with them, took them all the way up to, they won the Bass Music Awards over here, best artists, I think it was like 2016 or 2017, and took them to being just full-time, because they had part-time jobs at the time, full-time artists touring around the world, and they still are to this day, set up their own label. They're constantly flying around the world. That was absolutely amazing. Yeah, I mean, probably, and entrepreneur-wise, I mean, about 3 years ago, I moved into the film industry as well and started producing films, and that's been amazing transitioning into that. Which I'm still working on as doing my music, and I know there's going to be lots more kind of successes in that area as well, which is which I'm really looking forward to. I've sort of gone from music into film, which is, I like to say, I'm sort of expanding my experience in the entertainment industry.
Yes. Killer.
Yeah, I'll stop there. Otherwise, I'll just ramble on.
Oh, that's wonderful that you have so many victories to share. Are there any books that have helped you on your journey?
The first one that comes to mind is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber,
Yes.
which is the E-Myth stands for the entrepreneur myth, which is the idea that if you're a professional in a trade, you think that therefore you can go start up a business doing that trade. But running a business is just like is a talent in itself and a trade in itself. So you wouldn't really just say, "Hey, tomorrow I'm going to go now be a accountant," and then just open up shop, and you wouldn't know what to do, and it would fail. And that's why so many companies fail, because they don't understand that, and that is that's essentially what the E-Myth is. And and that's the same thing with artists going, "Well, I'm an artist. I'm just going to start my own record label." How hard are you? But the music and records, it's a lot of that. It's that same kind of thing, and a lot of the principles in that book is a lot of the principles I've applied to all my businesses, and that I try and put that kind of theory into the label machine as well, to kind of get that across to when people are setting up, that it's something you need to learn and skill, and you need to upskill if you want to do it properly. So yeah, that's a great book, and anyone who's thinking about starting a business, read it. It's getting a bit long in the tooth, it's getting a bit old, but like it's still a great read, and the principles still work. The classics, Napoleon Think and Grow Rich, I read when I was 18. That was amazing. Another book that I read years ago was Susan Jeffers' Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Yeah. Which is an amazing book, which is just the idea that people think that, someone who goes out and does something, they're fearless. They're not. Everybody feels fear. It's just the person who goes and does it just feels the fear and does it anyway. They just, they practice it, just, using that fear to kind of move forward. And it's something you can kind of learn to do. So yeah, that was a great book. What else? Timothy Ferriss, 10-Hour Working Week. That was a really good one. I just started sort of rereading that again recently.
Inspirational for sure.
Yeah, really inspirational. God, what else am I reading? God, I can't think of anything more off the top of my head. Mike, what's the Passman? You know what? Actually, I have to say, I haven't read Ari's Takes book yet.
Ah, yes.
Have you read it?
I have not yet, and I do intend to read that book as well.
Yeah, because I haven't really come across like a pretty comprehensive book that like could have sort of explains the music industry like as it stands in the last couple of years.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a more modern take. Because there are a bunch out there, such as, Jesse Cannon's Get More Fans. Like that one is a tome. Like it's a big book. And Donald Passman's book. And there's a few, it just seems to go with the territory that a lot of people who write in this industry have these dictionaries out there. But you're right. I don't know if there's anything quite as modern as Ari Herstand's book.
Yeah, I really want to read it. I kind of want to put something together from my point of view, but I want to make it snappy.
Yeah.
I've written a first draft, and it's about 50,000 words, and I've heard that you want to kind of have 70,000 words for a book. But I'm like, if I write any more, I'm just making it fodder. And it'll be interesting, and I'll put more stories in there. But I'm like, when I read a book, I just kind of want to get like through it, get all the elements out of it, and then just get on with kind of doing it. So yeah, don't know. Maybe my book might be, kind of one of the first ones that's a bit more of like, maybe a modern version. Who knows?
I've self-published 4 times at this point, and I have a 5th and 6th book waiting in the wings. But I would say,
wow,
yeah, 40,000 is good. Is a good amount to aspire to, and if you have more than that, great. 3 of my volumes are basically 12,000 to 20,000 words. So they're shorter, punchier, mini guides, handbooks, kinds of things, which John Maxwell also has. So I think it's legitimate either way. It's definitely thinking about your audience and what they're willing to suffer through. But if you can express like a lot of value in 50,000 words, I would take that over just a rambling 80,000 words any day.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I have seen some of your books. I would like this. The hard thing as well with online. Sometimes it's hard to know, is it a book or is it an ebook? Because you can't see, like, you can't physically see it, because some people are like, get my book, blah, blah, blah. And you download it and it's like it's a 50-page ebook or something. You're like, okay, it's a book, but it's not. Is it a book or So
yeah, no, I'm not deluded. All my stuff's actually on Amazon, and there's ebook versions and physical versions, and we're working on the audiobook versions as well. I'm not going to voice them because, well, I'm mobile these days. I'm always moving around, so finding the time, space, and gear to record all of that is a bit of a challenge. But yeah. But we're going to get those out there too.
Oh, amazing. Oh, well, offline I'll have to hit you up about the publishing side of things, because I've got a couple of friends who have been like classically published, but I'm not sure if that's quite where is the place for me. So I'll definitely twist your ear on that.
You got it. Absolutely. This has been a value-packed episode, Nick, so thanks for your time and generosity. Is there anything else I should have asked?
No, it was great. Thanks for having me on the show. It was really easy talking to you. I hope your audience got some value out of it. It was a pleasure.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Music in this episode was brought to you by Brian Young. Wherever you're listening to this right now, please consider leaving a 5-star review and comment to help us get the word out about the podcast.